When I was 5 years old, this kid called me a nigger. I did heroin. I wrecked my car because I was drunk driving. I beat the shit out of my girlfriend. They did something crazy. Hey kids, it's me, the car. I heard a quote recently. A man with a hammer sees every problem as a nail. It really struck me. No, but it really did strike me as it pertains to the subject of this series, which is bias, and one of the most important ways to fight bias, which we don't seem to have in our toolbox, which is critical thinking. Ironically, around the time that I am doing this series, a lot of synchronicities have come up around bias and cultural bias and cognitive bias and confirmation bias. There are a lot of different biases people operate from. In my very first video ever, about a year ago, it hasn't been that long ago, last winter on my Ode page, it was actually the very first thing I talked about was that a lot of people are on these different healing paths and they believe that whatever thing that helped them is the thing that's going to be right for you. One of the things I learned early on, it was actually a tenet in the first church I went to, is what's right for me ain't right for you. In the context of the church I went to a Pentecostal church. We had certain tenets, like we didn't eat pork and our women only wore skirts. And the whole idea was, it wasn't that we believed that you would go to hell or anything if you didn't operate by the tenets of the church. It was part of our covenant. That's what we do. What's right for me isn't right for you. You know, it was one of the things that made me realize when I was leaving that church. Well, to me, at that time, reading the Bible, I was like, well, in the New Testament, it kind of allows you to eat pork and shrimp and stuff now. And I like pork and shrimp. So, hey, I don't think that's something that's stopping me from being close to God. Digressing, I had that talk with my bishop when I was a child. Then, why do we not eat pork? And his answer was, what's right for me ain't right for you. And so, that stuck with me my whole life. I feel like maybe that's one of the reasons my bias is so flexible. I know that certain things that do pertain to me don't pertain to other people. I realized this a lot growing up as a Christian, that I would run into different evangelical groups when they would come and they would try to minister to me. And I would, of course, entertain the conversations, but it was never good enough that I explained to them that I already had a relationship with God and was saved and all that. I had to be their religion. I had to go to their church. It didn't matter that I was saved. That wasn't actually what they were interested in. They wanted me to do their thing. They wanted me to join their cult, which I understand all that. But that's a big problem. America was set up to where people would have the freedom to be different ways, to have different religions, especially since religion is basically one of the governing ethical concepts that inspires laws and bills to be passed. And that largely, and I'm not even trying to go political with this, but this is a political point, that like the bias of, Christian, Republican, national, whiteism basically heavily believes in Christianity, but the whole idea of America is the melting pot. A lot of Americans are not Christians, so they shouldn't be forced to bend to Christian biases. Biases are very fun. A lot of people have them. And Dan Coe does a video about what I'm about to talk about, as far as higher dimensional thinking or thinking like a genius. He doesn't call himself a genius. He's nicer than me a little bit, because I will call myself a genius. But Dan Coe is nice. He calls it, thinking like a genius, and that people think stupidly. And not that people are stupid, which I will say that's true. But yes, also people are stupid. But very intelligent people can think very stupidly because of the blind spots in their biases. I heard this woman say one of the most ignorant things I've ever heard, and hopefully if she watches this video, I don't even remember who you were, and I don't mean to insult you by this. This whole video is about bias, so just understand I am trying to reach into your bias with this statement if you happen to be watching this. But they were talking about security, the idea of security, and that they talked about, I don't remember the exact context, but they were saying that they always like prayed for security, or like, you know, that was one of the things that they affirmed. And then they thought to themselves, you know, I don't care about security. Like, why am I doing an affirmation for security? And I thought to myself, like, only a person with a lot of security would have the luxury to even feel that way. It reminded me of this bumper sticker that I saw. It said, sex is like air. It's not a big deal unless you're not getting any. And I guess security is like that. If security is something that is ingrained into your bias, to where you have never had to not know at least the base security of having parents, which I think is another one of the reasons like my bias is flexible, is that I understand that most people have parents, so that my perspective of not having parents is obviously pretty biased and not like other people. Because I'm aware of the fact that I'm not like other people in that way, I know that other people have a bias that I can't comprehend or understand. And not everyone has, you know, perfect parents, but I can't realize that even people who, and I'm not even trying to rag on, this is what my bias identifies as a person without parents, is that people with parents have this security bias. And maybe it's, you know, to a different extent. Like, it's kind of funny to me. I'm not ever trying to be in a pissing contest, you know? I'm just trying to tell my story. And, you know, I'll explain that, you know, well, I didn't have parents. Like, having no parents is like a thing that leads you to a significant disadvantage in life. That's a statistical thing. That's not just me bitching about my life. But like, one of the things a person said, for example, it's like, well, my parents had money, but they didn't share anything with me. Well, yeah, well, they didn't let you be homeless, though. It's like a thing that, you know, when I'm watching YouTube, the general normal consensus bias of life is that, well, what's the worst that could happen? You have to move back in with your parents? Well, actually, the worst that could happen is, like, I don't have to go to Skid Row, because, like, I don't have that automatic safety net that everyone else has built into their bias. People with parents and that bias are, like, allowed to just squander fortunes. Like, one of my friends who is kind of in the same situation as me, he has a bunch of self-loathing that comes to this situation, because unlike myself, he had parents that set him up, paid for him to go to school, gave him a car, but, you know, he had a beautiful wife, but he was just, it's kind of funny. There was this lyric that I always heard growing up from a band that I liked, called Suffering from Their Own Satisfaction. And it's literally taken me all the way until this year of my life to understand what that lyric meant. That's what this guy was doing. You know, he just had everything. And when you have everything like that, and I've kind of have experienced this before, though I'm not going to even sugarcoat it like that. I've experienced this before, where I've had everything and didn't have the gratitude for it. So I know exactly what he was going through. I understand suffering from your own satisfaction. You know, you're so inundated by stuff that you don't even really see, that you're not really paying attention to the important things. Anyway, it happens. But like, I know so many people who they believe that, well, the reason that my life sucks is because I was incredibly irresponsible. I squandered a fortune that my parents gave me for free. I did heroin. I wrecked my car because I was drunk driving. I beat the shit out of my girlfriend. They did something crazy, something irresponsible to end up in a situation. Whereas my bias is that that's just the situation that I am in, is the baseline. I try to reconnect with a friend of mine, and I'm not going to go into that much detail about it, but we got into an argument, and I don't even remember what I'm talking about. One of the people that inspired this video was the ex that I tried to reconnect with, and like I said, they tried to harass my page. But they were talking about how they don't want to have a job, and they just want to roam the land and do nothing. The idea of me wanting to become a millionaire or a billionaire or whatever I'm trying to do, subscribe. If you're watching this far, you better have subscribed. But she's talking about just, roaming the land freely without having to pay for anything. And I said that I was jealous of that. And she tried to like call me out on it. But like, what I'm jealous of is like, I wish I could like not have to work myself to death to like eventually one day get to the point of being able to like roam free like that. And she like made something like comment about me being exploitative of people that I can't reach, when our whole conversation about the person that she was commenting about with that was she was like talking about her brother who got a big inheritance, like, oh yeah, because I can exploit a white rapist who inherited money that he didn't deserve by telling the truth about his actions. That's not how exploitation works. And like the whole general idea of like, yeah, I have to be a billionaire one day, like to be able to like just roam around because my parents didn't leave me any money, and like I am not pretty enough for a dude to just pay my rent. So like I gotta work my ass to death, to even make the time to like make these videos and then go to school and have time on the side. And this is a really long video. I'm not gonna make it any shorter either. Let's look at my notes, all right? One of the biggest things that inspired this, and like I said, like and subscribe if you've made it this far. When I was 5 years old, this kid called me a nigger. It was the first time I was called the N-word. And I wondered to myself, I think that's one of the other reasons my bias is so liquid, is that when I was 5 years old, I was like, there's no way you can be racist if you're 5, right? Because like, this is your first day of school. You've never really experienced a human before. There's no way like you could possibly have an opinion about life yet. And so it made me realize, okay, from the age of 5 years old, I realized, okay, then your opinion is then therefore programmed into you by your parents, right? Because like the only way this 5-year-old kid could be racist is if his parents are racist. Because like I'm the first black person he's met. So like he couldn't already hate me. Like I'd have never done anything to him. And I think that kind of made me realize, like, because like as a black person, you were kind of warned about white people, obviously. Like if your parents aren't outright racist as black people, they're at least warning you that like the world hates your guts, like the least racist your black mom is like letting you know that you're not going to be able to get a job that easily. And then like, you kind of know what's going down. I didn't believe, it's like my first day of school. I was like, oh shit, that's really real. And I didn't experience that for a long time afterwards, fortunately. And this kind of goes into all the different like huge problems with society. Like it is a political thing. Like Jeffrey Epstein and the Me Too movement with Bill Cosby and all that. Systems of exploitation come down to people who are ignorant of their own abusive nature. Like it's like no one is abusive on purpose. Maybe some people are, of course, obviously some people are psychopathic and don't care about how their actions affect other people. But other than those people, most people try to behave in ways that are ethical to themselves, or at least they want to. And their subconscious beliefs, emotions, and actions kind of guide their life. And they're not consciously aware of the fact that they're actually running on programming that someone else programmed into their parents and to their parents' parents before they were born, and that actually they don't have a choice. They're not making the choice to feel the ways that they feel about things, so like my last video was about having all the empathy for all these people, and that's kind of why I'm making these videos. Is the main thing we need to have is empathy with this, instead of fighting with each other. We start to learn what our biases are, because I didn't do all this work to learn how to dunk on other people. I learned all this stuff to learn about myself, to make myself a better person. So I didn't learn all this stuff just to show other people. That was never my intention when I got into this life. This is purely because I was told that I was a psychotic, abusive person. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like, that's impossible. And since I've been doing this work on myself, I meet so many people that are psychotic, abusive people. And you can't tell them because they're like, no, I'm a great person. How's that happen? And that's why this is a long video. I'm kind of opening all these questions, all these different doors, because the next few videos are about to hit every one of these like as one subject at a time. And so yeah, really subscribe if you're into learning like what is wrong, what is the exact problem with human nature that makes us go to war with each other and fucking breed psychotic fucking pedophile dictators. Why is our society doing that? Surely it's something we could try to fucking work on. And forgive me for being a little upset. This is it for Psyche Blossom this week. Hopefully by the time you're seeing this, it's like happy and warm now. Yeah, and I'll have to wear this winter gear in my own bedroom. And I love you guys. And as always, stay mindful.